Hi everyone, and welcome to another live session of Meet the Expert, where experts give you their advice on how to succeed in the world of work. I'm your host, Kathleen, coming at you live from London, and joining me today is Jessica Hall, who is based in the Netherlands. Jessica is the is the manager of University Programs EMEA at Palo Alto Networks. Jessica, thank you for joining us. What's the highlight of the week been for you so far?
Thanks for having me, first of all. Very excited to speak to you today. Highlight of the week, well, I think the weather is the highlight of my week. I had a couple of days off earlier this week and went to the beach, so I've definitely had some nice, relaxing time.
Oh, that's so nice. I'm
Yeah.
jealous. Today we'll be discussing the ins and outs of remote work, how students can navigate and thrive in their new roles when working from home. Jessica, can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and about Palo Alto Networks?
Sure. So just to start with myself, I'm obviously Jessica. I started at Palo Alto Networks just over a year ago, originally from Ireland. So relocated everything to the Netherlands for this role. In my role, I'm responsible for managing the university relations team. So I manage the team who recruit all of our interns and all of our graduates, as well as overseeing our program for our intern program and also our graduate program. My passion has always been, I suppose, working with early and career programs. I started my own career as an intern. I started as a HR intern, thought that I wanted to go down the whole traditional HR route. And along the way, I discovered my passion for intern programs and university relations. And really, I feel really strongly about, making sure students are really well prepared for taking that leap in their career, and also supporting them along the way. About Palo Alto Networks, if you haven't heard of us, we are quite a large company. We've got over 70,000 customers worldwide. We are a cybersecurity company. So we deal with everything from your traditional firewalls and from network security to the more, cloud-based solutions as well. One of our values as a company is disruption. So we're constantly disrupting internally in terms of how we do things, but also in terms of our products. So it's a very exciting time. And obviously, COVID has been quite nice for the cybersecurity industry as well. We've got about 7,500 employees worldwide. So over the last couple of years, we've seen a large growth spurt, which has been really exciting, and I suppose really also puts the emphasis on early and career programs as well. So it's good news for me.
That's great. And what's Palo Alto's current outlook on recruiting given the pandemic?
I think that's, I suppose, a top of mind question for a lot of people, right? And we definitely, like many companies, took a bit of a step back and really looked at the situation. A couple of months ago, it was so unpredictable, and we didn't really know what, no one really knew what to expect with this. So we did see some of our hiring slow down. But the outlook is pretty positive. In terms of grad programs and intern programs, we did pause on our hiring. As this was our first year doing a grad program, we weren't quite ready, unfortunately, just to switch completely virtual for onboarding a new cohort. So we did push our date from September this year to January of 2021. So we hope to resume our hiring there in the next couple of weeks, I would say.
Okay, great. How do you think the pandemic has affected the way that we work and the future of work?
I think obviously there's obvious is where you're not in the office anymore. You don't see your colleagues face to face. There's that obvious lack of human interaction for sure. I think it's really, personally, I think it has fast tracked something that probably was going to happen anyway, which is companies are realizing that employees can be super effective and super productive at home. And one of the biggest overheads for any company is, real estate and office space. So I think it will change how we see offices function in the future. We're already seeing a lot of companies, say that their employees can work from home, for the long run. We, as Palo Alto Networks, we have introduced FlexWork. So it's a pilot that we're running this year, as and when our offices start to reopen, because none have in EMEA opened yet. There will be a policy in place where it allows the employees to tell us, do they want to come into the office or do you want to work remotely? So I think you are going to see more of this type of flexibility within companies, especially more in companies that traditionally probably didn't have a work from home policy. this has really brought about a change in how they set up their infrastructure to make sure that people can work remotely. For me, when we changed to remote, it wasn't a big shift. I had my laptop, I was ready to go, and I could log in and had all my remote secure access. So a lot of companies have spent time doing that. I think that we will see that prevail. But it also means that we have to adapt ourselves, right? We have to adapt and make sure that we can work effectively together as a team, especially as we might go longer periods of time without seeing other people in our team too.
Yeah, it's interesting. It really is the new normal.
Definitely, yeah.
How can a student prepare for a video interview versus how they would normally prepare for a live interview?
So I would say, do all the basics. So do everything that you would for your normal interview. So do your research on the company, do your research on the person interviewing you as well. If you know their name, which hopefully you do, you can obviously research their LinkedIn and view their page. All those basic tips still stand. I would always even say when you are researching a company, go the extra mile. Don't just click in on the first, few search returns that come up. Click into the news, see what maybe, if the company has made an acquisition lately, maybe there's a headline that the interviewer might not be aware of. They're still all relevant things to bring to the interview. Practically speaking, it does bring a new level of preparation, which is needed. And one of the things I would really say is, if you are not comfortable, doing what we're doing right now, talking on a video, get a friend, get someone from your family and practice. So get comfortable on camera, get comfortable sitting in the little square, looking down the camera and having that true conversation. The last thing you want to do is seem robotic across the video call. And you really want to make sure you're prepared. I would also say test the tool. So there are so many different tools that companies use, and not every company is going to use the same one. So you should hopefully get a link a few days in advance of your interview. I would say check if you can download that app onto your laptop or onto whatever device you're using. Test the audio settings, test the headset that you're going to be using. This is something that had happened to me in the past as well. I had an interview and my headset didn't connect properly on the day. It was a stressful experience. It's already a stressful time. You want to make sure that you are doing everything you can to prepare in advance. And I would just say the last thing is to try and relax. So try and get used to this mentality that this is the new normal, that everybody is doing this. You shouldn't feel, I would say, self-conscious about being on camera. It is the new normal and everybody is getting used to it now. So just try and be yourself, because that's ultimately the reason the company will pick you, is for being yourself and showing yourself.
From your experience, what are the major differences or challenges in remote working compared to going to the office?
Well, I think, first of all, the first thing is seeing your team and communicating. And, there are challenges in making sure that, you are all connected, you're all on the same page. Traditionally, you might have sat in your office space where you had your colleague next to you and you would just lean over and ask a question. You can't really do that anymore. So you do have to become more adaptable to maybe just picking up the phone. And I think traditionally early in career, folks tend to default to texting or instant messaging, which is great. And they're all great tools that you should be really familiar with. But in this situation, sometimes picking up the phone is the quickest thing to do. So adapting your mindset to that. I also think it brings about a fear. A lot of people fear that they're not visible. So they have this inherent fear that their boss might think that they're not working or that they're not necessarily doing their job. And for me, really what I see is the results. It's the output. So focusing on making sure you can do what you can do and what you're in control of, but making it visible to your boss. So whether hopefully you're having daily check-ins or weekly meetings. I know at my team, we meet every morning for 15-20 minutes and we talk about what we have on, coming up for the day, what we need to focus on, who needs help. We also have a chit chat as well, because we don't have that coffee corner in the lifestyle in the office anymore. But that really keeps us connected and on the same page. So I would say if the company you join doesn't necessarily have that culture, you could suggest it as an option. But perhaps also, a nice way to do is, if you haven't spoken to your boss in a day or two, you can send a few bullet points and say that this is what I'm working on. Let me know, should I adjust my priorities? So it's just finding new ways to communicate the same thing. But it's also figuring out what works for you. and what also works for your team. I think they're probably been some of the teething problems we see a lot with working from home.
Yeah, I really like that. I think having a team meeting in the morning is quite important, just to kind of start your day off right and not be in like limbo.
Yeah, it sets some structure, and everyone's aligned, and you feel a bit more social, I guess, as well, right?
Mm-hmm. So for students and recent graduates that are preparing for a new role that's remote, how can they get their head in the game?
Um, so I think, this comes with practice as well and figuring out what works for you. But if I compare how I get my head in the game now for work as opposed to when I maybe started working remotely now and then a few years ago, it's completely different. When I first started out, I might have had a few days where I would have worked from home, and I would have thought, okay, I'll get up at 7:30. I'll, start working straight away. This is great. I don't have a commute. It's amazing. I can stay in my pajamas. Brilliant. And it's really, really not. What I used to find was a pitfall for me was, I would be getting up, working, and I would hear my housemate go to work. And by the time the housemate came home, I was still working and probably hadn't had a proper lunch or hadn't, drank water probably sometimes. I got so absorbed in it. And while I thought I was being so productive and so great, it really wasn't conducive to being any of those things. So now the approach I take to get my head in the game is really thinking about how do I want to set myself up for the day. So I get up and I've learned over the years, it's important whether you're in the office or working from home to get up as if you're going to the office. So get up, shower, get dressed. If it's putting makeup on or whatever it is you do in the morning, you should do that. Have your breakfast, have your coffee. And one of the things that I'm doing since working remote is I go for a walk in the morning. So I go for, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on how much time I have. I will go for a walk. And for me, that's really getting me prepared for my day. It's really getting me psyched up that this is, it feels like I'm on my way to work, really, as you will. I call it my commute now. It's not really, but it's my commute. And that has really helped me. So practically speaking, I try to do that every day. But for some people that might mean, you maybe do a workout, maybe you go do yoga, I don't know, whatever it is for you in the morning, I would say do that. And think about your setup. There's the pitfall of working from home. My buzzer is just gone. Yeah, I would think about your work setup. So where your laptop is going to be, think about, ask the questions when you're getting hired or going through the onboarding process. What equipment the person or the company is going to provide you with, what maybe you need to provide for yourself, and really have yourself set up in a way that you are comfortable. I would say have a space that that's work. So I don't have the luxury of an office, but I use my dining table, and I have a corner of my dining table, and I have, during the week, it has my monitor, it has my keyboard and my mouse. And I clear that away at the weekend. So during the weekend, it really, it's not my workspace. I don't use it as a workspace. At the weekend, it's cleared away. So really separating home and work for me has really worked. The other thing as well is really focusing on what you can control. So you can only focus on, what you can do, your schedule, and everything, everything around you in your office, I guess. So there are some things I think you can do to get yourself in the game.
Yeah, I definitely think it's important to kind of schedule a little bit of fresh air. I think now that we're all stuck at home, a lot of us have been, it's nice to just get out and stretch your legs a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
Would you have any more? You mentioned a good setup at home. Would you have any more tips for the home setup or?
Yeah, so I think, it's important to also find something that's, I suppose, comfortable as well. So if you have a laptop and that's what you're going to be using, find ways to maybe, like I have my laptop or my camera on a pile of books because it saves my neck from looking down into the camera. So they're just some things that I would say, you should really do. I have a good chair. If you maybe don't, if you don't have the budget or the company is not maybe providing you with the means to get extra equipment, there are some, budget options out there. So you can get add-in cushions for chairs. You can get different things that will maybe make your space a little bit more comfortable. So there are little things that you can do. I would also say, think about when you are working, where you need to be. So while it's important to have a space, I also think there are certain tasks maybe where sitting and looking at the laptop for 12 hours is probably not going to be great. So I will change it up. I might go and sit on my balcony and work for maybe an hour, or I might kind of go and, depending on the task I need to do, sit somewhere else. So that's important to move around as well. So whether, it's outside, as you said, but I think it's also important to move within the day too.
I know one thing that people really struggle with can be time management. So how do you manage your time when working remotely and avoid taking too many breaks or too few?
Yeah, so as I said, I learned the hard way with this. So when I first started working from home, a few years ago, I didn't really schedule my time effectively. But now I really use my calendar to the fullest extent. So I go in there and I have my time blocked off in the morning that I know that's when I'm going to go for my walk. I might have time even blocked for like when I'm going to check my email so that I'm not feeling stressed, sitting down for my first meeting. But every single day I have my lunch blocked. So regardless of what's going on, I always have my time blocked for lunch. And so that really, the reminder, I'm someone that needs to be constantly reminded, and I need to also be, I suppose, quite strict with myself when it comes to sticking to it. But the Gmail reminder that pops up to tell me to take lunch is my cue to get up, make lunch, and take some time away from the screen. I also do that with breaks as well. So I put in breaks. If I know that I've had a lot of meetings back to back, I'll make sure that somewhere in between there's even a 5 to 10 minute break. And I find that the only way to do it for me is to block it out, because otherwise someone else will put a meeting in your calendar. You may forget that you need to take breaks because you just want to get through your work. So I think it's really important. I also would say it's really important to block off the time at the end of the day. So I started doing this a couple of years ago, and it's really worked quite well for me. Is at the end of my working day, whether it's 5, 6, 7, depending on the day, I will put a blocker and say, finish work. And it's kind of a reminder to stop. I find typically in the summer as well, because it's longer days and brighter, you do have this weird sense of a time warp where you're not really sure what time it is. So I think anything that you can do practically like that will remind you to take those breaks and take that time is really important to do.
Yeah, I like what you said about like really setting an end time to the day, because when you don't have to go home from work, you're like, oh, well, there's always work to be done. So.
Exactly. Someone always told me that, work is really important, but the more that you do, the more that there will always be work to be done. So it's a constant cycle. And I think you should always ask yourself, can this wait till tomorrow? Like, is this super urgent right now? And what is going to happen if I don't do this now versus maybe at 9 a.m. in the morning? So it's a constant struggle. I think no one has the right answer to it, but there are ways and tools that you can do that will help you.
When starting a new remote role in a company, how do you build connections and communicate with your new colleagues virtually?
Yeah, I think this is a tough one, especially if you've never worked in the corporate world before, because you probably had an idea in your head that you would have your lovely first day. You would meet everybody in the office. You would be shaking everyone's hand and be brought in to meet everybody. And now that's kind of taking away. For the most part, I think companies are doing a really great job of virtual onboarding. So you are probably being immersed in the company culture from the start. But I do think that this situation has maybe put a bit more of a onus on the individual to maybe make a little bit more effort to do it and to make those connections themselves. And I think one of the best ways that I've always found is just if you can keep in your mindset that you should be curious. So at this stage in your career, you should be curious about the job, about the company, about the people. And that stretches even into people in your team and beyond. So, as you start your first job and maybe get settled into how the systems all work, think about how do you set a meeting request to someone on your team for 30 minutes and say, like, call it an introduction. So I would, if it was me and you, I would say Kathleen and Jessica intro. That would be the title of my meeting. I would send it out to you and I would just say in my invite, would love to, meet you, introduce myself, get to learn about, what your role in the company is, how long have you been here, how will I be, interacting with you? And from that, you might find that people will be more comfortable, having chit chat or other conversations that you might have had in the office as well. So I think that's one thing that you can do. I think also you can't just do that once. So someone once told me you can't just, build your network and that's it and it's done forever and it's perfect. You have to maintain your network. So when you start that networking piece of reaching out to someone in your team or beyond to have that initial conversation, maybe in a couple of weeks' time, you drop them an instant message. So whether it's Slack or whatever, platform your company uses, saying, hi, how are you? How are things going? Or here's something funny I found, or something lighthearted, because you need to start building that rapport with them, so as to be effective colleagues. So I think you do have to put yourself, unfortunately, out there a little bit, especially in this world, because it's very easy to sit at home at your laptop and ignore anybody else because it's out of sight, out of mind. But this won't last forever. There will be times when you will have to probably meet your teams again, and for the first time in many cases. So you don't want that to be an odd experience. You would like to know that if you've been on the team for a couple of months, that you've already got to know them and interacted with them. A good tip in something that my team and I have been doing is every so often we'll have a virtual lunch. Or happy hour, depending on, sometimes happy hour on Friday, lunch maybe during the week. But it's exactly what it sounds. We bring our lunch to our Zoom call and we have a discussion, but it's not work related. It's more, how was your weekend? What are your plans for, the next few days? And stuff that you would have had over lunch, I guess, with your colleagues in the office. And you'll find, if you're new to a team, that if you start doing that, or even, suggesting to do that with your team if they're not already doing it, it will start to build those relationships organically. And you will start to learn things about who maybe is an expert at something. Maybe someone's really a good expert at formulas and an Excel spreadsheet, and one day you're really stuck at home and you know who to reach out to. So they're the type of ways that I think you can still build those connections as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important to still be able to kind of speak to your colleagues outside of the workplace a little bit and create those kind of more like a friendly atmosphere. Yeah. One thing my manager did as well was she set up meetings with me for people from different departments of the company. So like the product team and the IT department and things like that. So I kind of got like a whole 360 view. So that was
really good.
Really amazing. Yeah. Starting in a new company, it's always nerve-wracking, and many people deal with feelings of anxiety and insecurity. How can students overcome this, especially when they're working from home?
I think this is something that's probably a lot of people struggle with anyway, but I think it may be amplified in this current situation, because you have more time to be on your own and you have your mind kind of twirling around. I think the first thing you need to remember is, if you're not totally comfortable with this whole remote working, that a lot of people aren't. So there are times even when I'm really not happy about it. There's people on my team, and there's people who've been working for years who are really not happy about it. So you're not alone in feeling maybe that this is weird, or that this isn't how you, I suppose, imagined it. I think, I watched one of the previous Meet the Expert talks that you guys did with VMware, and the lady talked about growth mindset. So I think that is a big piece, and I couldn't, agree more with that. You need to have a mindset where you're thinking, okay, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, but I'm going to make the best of the situation. So I think when you can make that acceptance, or start to, that will help. Along the way, practically speaking, I think you have to really focus on what you can control. And what you can really control here is making sure that you're taking really good care of yourself, making sure that your setup is in a way that you can be effective with your job. I think, making sure that you are going for your walk, making sure that you have even basics like go grocery shopping and have enough that you have your lunch and everything. So you're not worrying about that. And, I have to run off the Zoom call and go and find something to eat now. You know what you have in the house. They will all, I suppose, eliminate that feeling. But the main thing, I think, is to recognize that with any job, like you're ever going to have, there are always going to be feelings of that anxiety feeling, and, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not learning fast enough. And I would really say trust the process. So you have been selected for your job for a reason. I always say to everybody that we hire for any of our programs that we saw something in you that really, we felt made you the best employee that we could probably have. So we see that in you. So you need to start believing in yourself, trust the process. If you're really not, that none of that is helping, you're not alone, right? Chances are you've had other people start in the company with you. Talk to them. I think the worst thing we can do is just suffer alone and sit there and think, I'm the only one feeling this way. If you don't feel comfortable talking to your new colleagues yet, talk to your friends, talk to your family. If you can talk to some colleagues, you can reach out and you can say, hey, like, how are you feeling? this is what I'm struggling with today. I feel a bit stressed about this. I'm not really sure what to do. If you have a question, typically in the old way, you would have probably tapped on the person next to your shoulder and said, hey, can you help me? You will need to reach out to them on instant message or give them a call, but that's okay. So, be patient with yourself, but also talk about it. And I think the more you talk about it, the more you'll realize that you're not alone. And everybody, even if they've had a 1-year experience or they've had 20-year experience, are probably feeling a little bit anxious about the situation anyway.
I think that's really good advice. Thank you, Jessica. So we normally kind of wrap up these sessions with a few questions from our students. So I will start off with Li Ying from the University of Bath School of Management asks, how should I deal with technical delays during discussions or meetings?
Well, you heard my buzzer went off there 3 times during this call. I think the reality is unexpected things are going to happen when you're working remotely. So whether it is your cat crawling across your laptop screen, or you probably will see Zoom calls where your colleagues maybe have kids and they're still they're at home with them too. And you're not going to be the only one that's experiencing this. So I think the most important thing is to remain calm and not stress and feel, oh, I've done something wrong, because it's not your fault. You likelihood your house was not built to be, set up for office work in that way in terms of network. So that's the first step. I would also say as well, a lot of meetings you can actually click the button, so you can click like the link into a lot of the Zoom meetings or the whatever application you're using. But there are also dial-in, so you can actually dial into a call. Which it will give you a number, it will give you a code. So I always have my mobile phone beside me so that if I do drop, I can quickly pick up my phone, try and dial into my meeting, and hopefully there's not too much of a delay between me leaving from the laptop versus getting on the call that way. There will obviously be a delay, and I think the more you go through it, the more you'll realize it's fine. But I think if you panic, that's the worst thing you can do, because you won't be able to think. You will freeze and you'll just want to just, I don't know, go and run away. But just, be prepared, expect, that it probably will happen, and just go with the flow, I would say.
Yeah, I only discovered that dial-in about a month ago. I had no idea before that. Of course, it was during technical difficulties. So what are the top 3 skills one has to master in order to be considered for remote-based work? That is Faidon from ESADE.
So I think, it's a really great question. And I honestly think that the skills that you need to be good at for any job are probably what you should be good at if you want to be working remotely as well. I would definitely say communication is absolutely key. It's always been key to many roles, but I think now more than ever, it's really up there. And that's everything from being able to effectively speak on camera and be comfortable on video, to being able to pick up the phone to someone, to knowing when to email them versus when to maybe instant message them. So, emails, typically you would probably expect a reply maybe 24, 48 hours after you send it. If you want something urgently, you need to master the art of picking up the phone or instant messaging, because you're not be able to run to someone's desk anymore. I would also say be mindful of how you come across when you're writing as well. So when you write an email, quite often you write it in the tone that's in your mind and the way your mind thinks, but also be mindful of how maybe it's perceived by the person that you're sending it to. Quite often in these times, you may not have met the person that you're sending it to, so they may not know your tone, they may not know your style. So there are plenty of online learnings that you can do that will help you kind of adjust your style and learn how to maybe effectively write an email that maybe won't be misinterpreted, because that's the last thing you want. So I'd say communication for sure. I would say team building or teamwork is probably the next one, because now more than ever, you have to come together as a team. And it's quite ironic because I haven't seen my team in months at this point, but I would actually say that we are working more effectively now than we were before. Because we have to be more, alert as to what's going on. We have to be more mindful of what someone else's bandwidth is versus our own, because we can't see, it's not visible anymore. We have to make that effort. So being a good team player is absolutely the next thing I would say. Additionally to that, on the points I raised, your team members will have times when they're struggling with feeling stressed about the situation, and they may not be as productive. So they will need your help, and you may need to jump in. So knowing them and getting to know them will allow you to know when to jump in and do that too. And I would say, and this is something I say for anyone who's early in career, it's the next thing is asking questions and just being curious. You are at such a unique point in your career where everybody is going to want to help you. Everybody is going to want to see you be really successful because they recognize that you're learning and that you're new to all of this. So you should be asking questions. You should be curious about, the company you're joining, the people that you're working with, the products, if something doesn't make sense, ask the question. Don't let being at home stop you from reaching out and asking the questions. Or, questioning can go another way as well. If you've had a really good idea or maybe don't understand why something is done the way that it's been done, and maybe you think of a different way to do it, ask the question as to why it's done that way, and maybe then make a suggestion as to how you think it could be improved. They're all things that you can effectively do, believe it or not, from your dining room table and having not met everybody, but it does require you to put yourself out there. So there's some of the things I would say that are top three, but as I said, I think they're key for any job.
And lastly, well, you've already given so much advice, so I'm not sure if this question is it's too much, but it's what's one piece of advice for students, or the main piece of advice you'd give a student starting off their career? That's Michaela from Cork Institute of Technology.
Yeah, so I would say the questions one is a big one. So there is no such thing as a stupid question. You might think that there is, but there really isn't. The only stupid question you can have is if you keep asking the same one, because that means you are not listening. So I would say that. I would say also be patient with yourself, because I do think that and I definitely was in this category myself, but when you are early in career, you do have this perception where you think that you should be somewhere that you're maybe not at this point, or you think you should be learning faster, or you think you should be absorbing all of this information. But you really should be really living in the moment. I know that sounds so cliched, but living in the moment and learning, what's being asked of you there and then, because that ultimately will set you up for success to get to where you want to go. So it's okay to be passionate and it's okay to have ambitions, but unless you're patient with yourself to allow yourself the time to get there, you're not going to be successful. So you need to, I suppose, have the patience with yourself. And it doesn't mean not be ambitious. So I don't want to be misconstrued, but it just means that you allow yourself to learn and be forgiving of yourself when you make mistakes, because one of the best way to learn anything is to do it wrong once or twice, and then you learn from that and you will never make that mistake again. And as humans, we are inherently flawed. So we will make mistakes, and I make mistakes every day. I don't know about you, Kathleen, but I do. And so, don't expect that you have to be perfect, because I think that is a trap that some students tend to fall into when they go into internships or roles.
Yeah, everyone kind of learns at their own pace, and it's okay.
Exactly, and in different ways, right? There's so many different ways, so many different learning styles. So I think it's important to accept that and be mindful of that too.
Okay, well, I think that about wraps it up, Jessica. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today. I'm sure that the students found it really, really useful. And until the next Meet the Expert, we will see all of our viewers again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.